dating sober or sober curious is hard. And you can do hard things, like
Yeah.
you can do difficult stuff. And I think that's where you're going to get a really beautiful source of what I call intrinsic courage. Knowing that something is really difficult and doing it anyway, that's where you get real confidence and you don't need the liquid courage for it.
Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia. I'm a dating coach, and I'm sharing no-nonsense advice for navigating modern dating with confidence and ease, whether you've been on dozens of dates or you're just getting started. I believe dating can be fun without any alcohol involved. Today, we're talking about sober dating, and I can't wait to get into it. Real quick, if you can do me a favor and head over to YouTube to subscribe to Dating Intentionally, that would just make my day. If you prefer to watch instead of just listen to podcasts, you can find videos of all my episodes, including solo ones on YouTube, and they're ad-free for now. As you're watching, I appreciate your comments as well. You can find my YouTube channel by searching Dating Intentionally YouTube or just heading to my bio link on Instagram and finding it there. Thank you for watching, and thank you so much for subscribing. Okay, today you're going to hear my conversation with Tawny Lara, also known as the Sober Sexpert. She's the author of the book Dry Humping, A Guide to Dating, Relating, and Hooking Up Without the Booze, and she's the co-host of Recovery Rocks podcast. She also has her very own vinegar-based botanical non-alcoholic beverage called Permeates, which I had the pleasure of trying with my friends at one of our weekly dinners. It was actually really good, and I'm not a huge drinker, so I always appreciate something fun to drink that isn't alcohol-based. You should definitely go try it. I really appreciated this conversation because I think sober dating is not talked about enough. So many date ideas revolve around alcohol, then that gets expensive. It's also not the best for our bodies and for our decision-making in some scenarios. I hope this conversation inspires you to think outside the bar when it comes to date activities. Let's get into it. Welcome, Tawny, to the Dating Intentionally podcast. I am so excited that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. Okay. I read your book. I bought Parentheses. I'm so excited to try it. And I'm just really excited to get to know you more. And the first question I have for you is from Hinge, which I know that you did not use to meet your partner, but let's see what you got. This one is, I'll brag about you to my friends if.
If you cook for me.
Yes. Okay. But
yes.
What if it's like just a scrambled egg? Like what level of cooking is brag worthy?
I love the nuance to this question. I am so grateful that my husband is like, he makes the most absurd, delicious meals. Like, I would be happy with scrambled eggs. If you make spaghetti and that's like if you boil noodles and then you just pour a can of tomato sauce, I will still brag to my friends about that. Like that's very kind.
That follow-up question, is your love language acts of service?
Yeah, yes, we're actually revisiting the love language conversation because I think it's an even split of acts of service and words of affirmation. Like both of those are very strong for me.
I love that. I mean, this makes me want to cook for you. So I feel like I can knock it out of the park.
Yes, just compliment me while you're giving me food. Ooh. And then like I'm yours forever.
Love it. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit, just like a brief overview of your backstory. And really, I just want to hear, why are you so passionate about creating this new narrative around sobriety?
Yeah, I love that question. For me, I'm one of those stories of people who are like, I wrote this book for me. I wrote this book because it's the book I needed when I was newly sober. Arguably, I needed this book when I was still drinking. Let's be real. But I did not see sobriety or sober curiosity modeled. It was not an option when I was growing up and in my early 20s. So I want to show people that you can live a fun, fulfilling life without alcohol or with, it's not even about sobriety. I think it's more about mindful, intentional consumption. I'm not anti-alcohol by any means. I'm anti-big alcohol and I'm anti-binge drinking culture and the societal norms that make people think they need to drink alcohol. I'm all about mindfulness and intentional behaviors.
Amazing. I mean, me too. And I think it really does tie into like what I'm trying to do here, dating intentionally, being mindful, and just we all are kind of in control of how we can be more mindful. And I think checking in with yourself about how you are using alcohol or your relationship with alcohol is part of that, because that's something like you can, I don't know, change, or in some, not everyone can, but obviously it's like, it's something that you can decide how much you want to take part of in your dating experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what's I'm finding to be so fascinating is the majority of people who read my work and who actually, and even who buy our drink, we have a non-alcoholic drink, still drink alcohol. And I think that is super fascinating because it shows that we are in a space where people just want options. They want people to be present on a date. They want, consent is a huge conversation right now. And that's we could talk about alcohol and the Me Too movement. But also people want interesting drinks and they don't want to be hungover. They want to have a good date and they want to remember it, so it's
Yeah.
like, you don't have to be sober to be interested in these, in these things.
When you say it like that, it's like, is that a tall order? Like, no, it's not.
No,
But
it shouldn't be.
our culture doesn't lend itself to that necessarily. So it's like, even though that doesn't sound like much to ask, it's like you do have to intentionally do that on dates if you want to remember it, not be hungover, not spend, like your entire bank account on like these expensive cocktails and all that stuff. And that kind of leads me to the next question. So in your book, you talk a lot about your transition from your party days to not drinking at all, especially in like the dating context. And I love the chapter when you talk about how like the first moment when you took a sip of like a crappy beer and you were like, I don't need this,
Yeah.
before like, enjoying intimacy with someone. Can you talk a little bit more about the differences that you notice about dating once you took alcohol out of the picture for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I really had to start from the like 101 remedial, honestly, not even 101. I was
For
like
dating,
remedial for dating and just
even though you
life.
had dating experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's like, there's something about like my personal recovery story, and also as a journalist, this book is a journalistic book. There's so many interviews in there. A consensus that I have found is that there's something that happens when you reevaluate your relationship with alcohol. It requires a great deal of honesty and self-awareness that has a ripple effect in every other part of your life. And that I share all of that to say I had to learn how to date all over again. I had to learn how to network all over again and make friends all over again because alcohol was that link before.
So sorry, I just have just a quick question.
Yeah.
Did you realize that before you stopped drinking or after?
No, I did not know. My approach to sobriety it was supposed to just be a year-long social experiment. I was going to quit drinking for
I feel
1
like that's always
year.
how we start. That's always
That's how it starts. I joke that it's like that was my gateway drug to sobriety. It was like I was turning 30. It was my 30th birthday. And I was like, what if I just don't drink for my whole 30th year and I write about it? And that's what I did. And it's been 8.5 years since I've had alcohol. But yeah, that was not, I didn't know, now that I'm in recovery and I've done therapy and a significant amount of work, I was able to address a lot of the shit that I used alcohol to hide. And body image issues, dating insecurity, lack of self-esteem, PTSD, anxiety, all of that showed up in the bedroom. And I don't think I would have ever addressed my sexual traumas or even just my dating hangups, my body image hangups. I don't think I would have gone there if I didn't get sober first.
What I love about your story is like it really does take a great deal of bravery to do that. Even if you didn't really think about it on some level, you probably always knew that you were using alcohol to kind of numb out or like push these away out of your brain. But then, yeah, the second you remove that, you do have to face them. And it's like, that's so brave. A lot of us find other ways, alcohol aside, to never address these things.
And I get it because it's hard.
Yeah,
it's really,
it's really hard.
It's really, really hard. But, the biggest question that I get in my line of work is like, how can I feel more confident on a date without alcohol? How can I feel more confident in the bedroom without alcohol? How can I, have a difficult conversation with my husband without alcohol? And I remind people that giving up alcohol or even just being aware of your relationship with alcohol is one of the most, like you said, is one of the bravest, most badass things you can do. And it takes a significant amount of confidence to do that, to take a stand for yourself and to say, you know what? My relationship with alcohol is kind of weird right now. I want to step back. So many people just keep going, you know, and I didn't have that traditional stereotypical rock bottom story. And I think more people need to hear what I'm saying, because don't wait until you lose everything to reevaluate your relationship with alcohol.
Also, you
If
don't
you,
have to use everything to evaluate your relationship with
no,
alcohol.
you don't. Like, I am living proof of that. You don't have to lose everything. I lived a pretty quote unquote normal life. Like, I was a functioning drunk, and I was your stereotypical party girl. And I got to a point where it just wasn't working for me
Yeah.
anymore. So if you're listening and you're like, well, I'm not an alcoholic, or I don't do that, or like, stop comparing and just get really present and honest with yourself about your relationship with alcohol.
So for someone who is sober curious or like just wants to experiment themselves or is just like, wow, I really need to make a change, what can they expect when they do make the switch from like just not drinking on dates? What is it? What are we getting into here?
It's tough, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's really difficult to
You
date
don't sugarcoat
sober.
anything here. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need sugar.
I don't
Um,
sugarcoat anything.
um, like I said, I had to really teach myself how to date again, because I didn't realize how much I relied on liquid courage to get through awkwardness, or try to perform in the bedroom. Like, seriously. So, I share all of that to just say, like, dating sober or sober curious is hard, and you can do hard things, like,
Yeah.
like, you can do difficult stuff. And I think that's where you're going to get a really beautiful source of what I call intrinsic courage, by doing, knowing that something is really difficult and doing it anyway. That's where you get real confidence, and you don't need the liquid courage for it. But it's not easy.
No, it's definitely not easy. I mean, I think in my experience, had almost 200 dates in like 10 months, and I did not like that every date was, or not every date, but there were so many dates that were focused on drinking. I was tired of it, and I drink socially only. I'm not that interested in it, but it's like, okay, if that's what we're doing, fine, I'll have one and only one, so, but
Well,
like
can
I
I
was,
ask you,
yeah.
do your dates, did they ever pressure you to have more than one?
You know what? I think I had some kind of really lucky experience. I didn't really experience that at all. Like,
Oh, good.
if I didn't want another drink, I just would leave. Like, I just ended the date, and that I never had any issues. And if people protested, it's like I have to go feed my dog. Like, sorry,
Yep.
just I have things to do. Like, I can't do this right now. And I mean, there were times where like I made the decision to have more than one, and I really regretted it the next day. Like with the hangover, for me, like sometimes it just hits you, and it's like, what the hell? It's not worth it. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't even see this person again. It's not even worth it. Um, you know,
And it's
so
expensive.
so
If, like,
expensive.
all the emotional stuff aside, alcohol is so expensive.
And I would say, just even my experience, I found that I was constantly searching for other dates, and I did like do that. I have no problem planning dates. I always say, like, ladies, like, please don't let the guy just plan all the dates. Like, please, if there's something you want to do that's more fun than just sipping over the same cocktail you always get, like, go do something else. And you talk about this in your book. You have so many activities, so many date ideas. So can you share like your top 3 sober date ideas
Yeah.
you love?
It's so funny. There's a whole chapter in my book that is just sober date ideas. Like, it's just date. It's like thousands, I think, of date ideas that do not involve alcohol. And I was shocked, actually, when I finished writing that chapter. I was like, there's so many things to do. Why is our default, let's grab a drink?
I think it's because we have to acknowledge, like, if in some ways it does feel safe and easy, and like it's like a low hanging fruit. Like, this is something that most people will probably enjoy. It's just like it's just a safe option. Just
It
like
it's
the
it's
cost
it's
of it
easy, right? It's
for first date.
easy.
Yeah,
Something that I encourage for a first, second, third date. Um, I'm a big fan of experiential dates. And by that I mean a shared experience. Go do something, do an activity, go bowling, play mini golf, go to a museum. Even just going to a coffee shop can replicate let's grab a drink, where you're just, I'm all for a coffee or a tea date, but I would still encourage some movement for a couple reasons. One of which, if you're just having coffee, you're still just sitting there staring at each other, and it's not really an experience. If you can even just go for a walk with your coffee, um, there's so much else going on around you that you can talk about that might bring up interesting conversations. Whereas if you're just sitting there staring at each other with your coffee, your anxious energy is just sitting there, and you're like, if you're like me, I was always like tapping my feet, and I was like, God, I hate this. I fucking hate this.
Yeah.
But so movement can really help relieve some of those first date jitters. And when you're looking at it, you're at a museum and you're looking at a piece of art, you guys are talking about the artwork. You're not necessarily talking about childhood trauma and who you voted for and heavy shit. Like, let's talk about what's in front of us right now. It can really create a present experience.
I know, it's like some people get locked into thinking that getting to know someone means talking about the hard, heavy stuff. But sometimes getting to know someone is really just getting to know how they view the world around you. Like the art, the people in the park that you're around, like just like interacting with other parts of your environment. So I think focusing on that on a first date is way more beneficial than getting to let's talk about your parents' divorce, or whatever it is.
Yes.
Yeah, like, why are you screwed up? Let's find out right now. It's like, no, get to know them.
Well, and that, Talia, that's why in my book there's also there's a chart of the difference between vulnerability and oversharing.
I love that chart. Yes.
It helped, learning the difference helped me so much, because like you're saying, we're in this era of mental health destigmatization, where it's very normal to put your mental health diagnosis in your Instagram bio, right? And people talk about this on dates, and I'm not against that. I'm really not. But it's also like, there's a difference between saying, my parents were divorced when I was 5, and then from that I developed this, and this, and I'm working on it in this, and this way. That is way too much to share for any date, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's ways to share about yourself that are not about things in the past. Like you said,
Yep.
Let's talk about the flavor of what kind of coffee did you get?
Yeah.
How do you take your coffee in the morning? What do you think of this piece of art over here?
It's you have to ease into it. I always think my like visual for that, it's like dating. It's like getting to know someone is like wading into a pool where there's a shallow end and a deep end. So in the shallow end, you can say, oh yeah, my parents are split up. One lives in New Jersey, one lives in New York. That's like what I would say. End of story. No other details. And then as we go further deeper into the pool, we could talk about how it affected me later, and all that. But it's like, we have to get there. You can't just dive right into the deep end.
Yes. Everyone's going to have different comfort levels too. So whatever feels right for you, pursue that, but I would also challenge you, if what I just described sounds like the oversharing, if that does sound like your typical first date and you're not getting second or third dates, maybe think about that.
Agree. Well, speaking of what we're talking about on dates, let's talk about how to bring up sobriety on dates. Like, what has your experience been like there?
Yeah, that is a whole other chapter in the book. As I talked about my experience sober dating. I was sober for 2 or 3 years before I met my now husband. Living in New York City, went on a lot of dates. I hated dating. I really did. I know. I'm sorry. I know I'm on a dating podcast, but like, I really hated it. But now that I think I understand it better, I think I would like it more. But whatever. I'm married anyway. But on that note, you have to keep dating your spouse. Which is why in that dating chapter, the sober dating ideas chapter, it's split up by like first through third date, and then once you're kind of comfortable, and then once you've been like you're with your person, how do you keep it interesting? The book really does try to meet the reader wherever they are. So I split it up into three parts. based on my experience. So there's one option is, this is assuming you're using the apps, right? This is how to do it on the apps. You could be very upfront on the app and just on your profile and say, in recovery, sober curious, mindful drinking, whatever
Or
feels
also
right.
just on Hinge, like there's a thing that you say, I don't drink. Like it's like alcohol,
Exactly.
no. And then,
And
yeah, it's very,
I'm so glad that that's an option now. And there's sober dating apps now,
oh,
which is
okay,
great.
cool.
So my favorite option was what I just described, being very upfront. Another option is waiting until maybe you're DMing, maybe you guys talk on the phone a couple times. That's another option. And then another is kind of like we were saying, you can let them know pretty early, I don't drink, but once they've earned your story, then you can really share. Share what feels right, share what feels comfortable.
Right.
And I think it's also important to acknowledge a significant difference here, because dating when you're sober curious, meaning you do dry January, you drink non-alcoholic drinks every once in a while, is very, very different than someone who is living a life in recovery,
Mm.
who is maybe they're working a 12-step program, maybe they just got out of rehab, maybe they're like they quit drinking because they had to. I think it's important to acknowledge the difference between the two and the gray area in between.
That's a great distinction. I mean, I think I also want to touch on what you said about wait until they earn it. It's like you don't have to justify your decision to not drink on any date. Like you can just say, "Oh yeah, I don't drink." End of story. You do not have to share. You don't have to get into it. Like focus on topics you enjoy talking about. You don't have to share all that. And I was going to say on my end, people would often tell me when they were messaging me. That's what I came across the most. Like if they didn't drink, they would be like, "Oh, but like when we were in the planning the date phase, they'd be like, I don't drink, so let's get a coffee," or like, "I don't drink, let's get dessert." Like it was just casual. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be this big reveal. And if someone doesn't want to date you because you're sober, they are absolutely the wrong person for you, and that shouldn't phase you at all. Like, yeah.
Yes, and I am, because I write about this. I wrote a book about dating, so my friends will send me screenshots of conversations they're having in the apps of like, they say, I don't drink alcohol, but I would love to do this instead. And the replies that these people are getting is like, "Oh, I've tried dating sober people before. I can't do it." And I'm like, "Okay, you dodged a bullet there. Like, I'm glad you did not go on a date with this person." But
Okay.
yeah,
That pisses me. It's just like if you don't want to date someone sober, you don't have to say that. You could just unmatch them or just be like, "Okay, like that actually doesn't work for me, whatever, move on." Like what? I don't
well, and
know.
I
Just
agree with you, and I think it says way more about the other person than it
oh
says
yeah.
about you. And you don't go on a date with someone who's like that. They're
No.
so not worth your time.
No.
And I'll also say, my husband has shared with me that when he was dating in sobriety, he had a very different experience than I did, because I think as a man, women saw a sober man as a man who has his shit together. He is emotionally intelligent. He's self-aware. Whereas a woman is, damaged goods. So like, I think that was like it was very interesting to hear how he had such a positive experience, where I and many of my female friends have had like what I just described of like, "Oh, I can't date someone sober." Like, okay, something about my recovery intimidates you, so bye.
Do you think that it's like, would you like one question that came up on Instagram a couple of times when I shared that you're coming on is like, do you think sober people should date people who are also sober?
I hate to be this person who because like there's also a chapter about that in my book. Because that's another big question I get is like, I don't drink, but my partner does. So, or like, because a lot of people quit drinking when they're already in a committed relationship. So
Mm.
we're not just talking about dating here. We're talking about relationships. And the question is really to the person, can you personally be in a relationship with someone who drinks alcohol? And maybe you have to set boundaries around that. Maybe that means, you're fine with them drinking, but you don't want alcohol in the house. Maybe you're okay with them going out and having a good time with their friends, but you don't want to kiss them when they get home because smelling whiskey might be too triggering for you. So I think it's very difficult. Um, I will say something I learned from my reporting: a lot of relationships end when one partner gets sober and the other keeps drinking, only if alcohol is the central theme of the relationship.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, I
That
know
makes
I know a
sense.
lot of people who are sober and their partner drinks every once in a while and it's a non-issue. So,
Yeah, I have friends like that too. I have close friends and one got sober in their relationship and then the other person who drinks just drinks less and it's really not a big deal at all. Like, yeah.
it's so personal. I will say I think this question is really important because I think if you're dating, if the thought of going on a date with someone and them drinking a glass of wine in front of you, if just the thought of that feels overwhelming to you, I'd say you're probably not ready to date someone who drinks yet.
Mhm.
Like maybe today you should not date someone who drinks. But that
Right.
doesn't mean your feelings might evolve on that. Like from personal experience, at first I did not want to go on a date with anyone who drank. It made me uncomfortable. But the more dating I did, I
Mhm.
learned I was okay if you have a glass of wine with dinner. That was fine with me. But then I also learned, I don't feel comfortable kissing someone who is shit faced.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like you have to figure it out.
Right. So speaking of kissing and being shit faced, you have a whole section. The first chapter I read in your book was the one about sex and booze because that one was that's very interesting. How I really didn't realize before reading the chapter how much alcohol can really affect sex, even though I know that it's not as nearly as good, like on so many levels. So let's talk about a lot about that. Like in your journey, was drinking more of a thing with the sex part or the dating part or both? Like
It was both. I would say, even just to zoom out of sex and dating, I would say interpersonal relationships in
in
general.
general. Okay. Got it.
Friendships, coworkers, family dynamics. I could not handle interpersonal relationships
Wow.
without alcohol. And I had no idea. I didn't realize that until my own recovery journey. So
So
that's why we say one day at a time, because you keep
right.
learning.
So what's your advice for someone who just really feels like they need to at least have one drink before they have sex with someone for the first time?
I would ask that person why they think they need that. Again, I am not anti-alcohol at all. If you have a healthy relationship with alcohol and a glass of wine before having sex with someone relaxes you, and you do have better sex because of it, fine. Like
Mhm.
do what feels right for you. What I'm talking about here is if you are relying on that glass of wine or the shot of tequila or 5 shots of whiskey, whatever. That was me. I was the 5 shots of whiskey girl.
Okay.
Um, if you're relying on that to get through something or to make yourself become a different person, I relied on alcohol to be performative in the bedroom because I didn't know who I was. I didn't have the confidence to ask for what I wanted in the bedroom. I didn't even know what I wanted in the bedroom. So much of my sexual liberation came from sobriety and really asking myself what I actually want out of a sexual experience and separating that from what society told me that I should want from a sexual experience.
And we need to be asking ourselves that no matter your like relationship with alcohol aside, like that is such an important question. And I'm so glad that you asked yourself that question sooner than later because I think a lot of people are very late in life when they're asking themselves that, which is sad. And you did talk about faking orgasms in your book, which I related to so hard. I did that for so many years. And
Mhm.
it's like yeah, and I can see how alcohol being in the mix too just makes it even more confusing. Like it's like, what do I even like? What am I doing here? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially, there's a section of the book where I talk about how how gay bars are actually doing it. They do a disservice to the queer community. I'm bisexual, and my book is very queer. Most of the people I interview are queer, and a lot of the research that I've done shows how, what a lot of us are introduced to alcohol and sex around the same time, within probably the same
I never
year,
thought that. That's so true, though.
you
Yeah.
know and then to take that another layer, when you add queerness to that, you go to the gay bar because that's your people. That's the one place you can go to be around people like you. And so when you are exploring your sexuality and you're exploring your gender identity with drugs and alcohol, it can get really, really messy. And a lot of the queer people, including myself that I've interviewed, talk about how separating their sexuality and gender identity from their relationship with substances was one of the hardest parts of their journeys.
I can only imagine. I love when you talk about the book, how it's like there is this, that gay bars are like a safe space for the queer community, but then it's like, where are the daytime safe spaces? And you like brought up this great point of like, well, if they're here and in the evening or there's drinks, like they must exist somewhere else, but there's no alcohol involved. And it's like, that was really interesting. I like that point a lot. And another thing you bring up about sex and booze in your book is inhibitions, which I never really thought about, but it's like you mentioned that we need our inhibitions to stay safe. And that is just another, it's like, wow, that is so true. And I think back on my college days and like how many decisions I made where I definitely did not feel safe and there was alcohol involved. And it's like, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, a couple questions ago you asked, like, what if someone thinks they need alcohol to have better sex? I would ask them why they think they need it, and the answer is usually, oh well, I'm uninhibited. And I'm like, and
Mm,
then again I break that down. Okay, well, like, so what does that mean? What does uninhibited sex mean for you? What does inhibited sex look like for you? And why can you only access that with alcohol? So, and I'm a journalist, so I answer questions with questions. Like, like because everyone's answer is going to be so deeply personal. Like, we all use substances for different reasons and it's very personal. So, if you think that alcohol makes you better in the bedroom, I would like to know why. I would like to know, you know, maybe your answer is I feel more confident or I feel more comfortable asking for what I want. So again, I would want to take that even further. Why do you need alcohol to feel more confident? Do you, for me, like my answer was like I had to address body image issues. So it's like there's it really is an onion. There is so much to peel back, especially for women and queer folks. Our sexualities, our gender identities are so complex in a patriarchal world and a heterosexual patriarchal world
mhm, mhm.
that we really need to give ourselves grace, because sober dating, mindful dating, dating
Mhm.
intentionally is really hard and it's not encouraged at all.
No, it's really not. Yeah, so very true. That was beautifully said. And sorry, I want to go back to if like dating someone who isn't sober when you're sober, or the other way around. So what if I drink and the person I'm dating is sober? What are some ways that I can support them in their sobriety journey?
Okay, this is my favorite question to be asked because
Well, I'm glad I asked
as
it.
because like as a queer person and as an activist, I think allyship is crucial. We need allies. And in the same way that queer people need allies, in the same way that all marginalized communities need allies, sober people really, really need allies too, because so many, you don't know unless you've experienced it, right? So I would say, like, one of the most meaningful things that a friend did for me recently, she invited me to her birthday party. It was at a bar, and she knows that I'm comfortable in bars. I'm okay with that. Um, but if you're not, please advocate for yourself. But when I got there, she had a bucket of non-alcoholic beer and a bucket of Corona. So, when I showed up, I felt so loved and supported, and just because she thought ahead. She was like, I know my friend doesn't drink. I want her to have some options. And of course, I was not the only one drinking the non-alcoholic beer. When people have options, they're going to exercise those options.
Right.
And that also made me happy because she created this inclusive space where people didn't have to drink alcohol if they didn't want to.
I love that
So
also because like that it's like you sometimes you are if you're gluten free or like if you're vegan, it's like you're bringing
yes,
your own, and but then it's like it's just there. It's just like you've already been considered. I love that.
it's that's a perfect comparison. I often talk about like how creating like a inclusive sober space is very similar to dietary. It is a dietary restriction for some
In some
people.
ways, yeah,
Some
yeah.
some people do not drink alcohol because they're allergic. They have they can't drink it with medication. It is a dietary restriction for some people. So, just thinking how you can be more inclusive. If you're hosting a party, have non-alcoholic drinks, not just seltzer. There's non-alcoholic wine, there's
I mean,
beer,
hello,
there's
you have a
spirits.
drink. What
I
about
have a drink. I think just having options, I think that is the most important thing for me. Weddings, have a non-alcoholic drink, a couple non-alcoholic drink options. If you're going on a date with someone who doesn't drink, go out of your way to find a restaurant who has a mocktail menu. Like stuff like that goes a long way with us.
I'm loving the mocktail menus everywhere. I think they're so creative and interesting and delicious. Like I
Yes.
definitely am so happy that they're just 'cause, like here's the thing. And I love my friends, my fiance's friends. They're fantastic, but their social activities all revolve around drinking and it can be a lot sometimes. It's interesting cuz they also only recently left college a few years ago because they all have PhDs. So
Mm.
it's like almost like I graduated with my undergrad degree in 2014, so it's like almost 10 years ago, or it's 10 years ago. Oh my god. And so like I'm like drinking games? What? Like
Yeah.
I don't 30 almost 32. Like I don't play drinking games. But they all want to play drinking games and I'm just like, ugh. And it's the pressure can be crazy. Like they will well, not force me, but they'll really try to get me to play. And I'm just like, I'm not doing this. And it's like a whole thing. And so yeah, I'm just happy that this so like it's becoming more mainstream to not drink, to have the delicious non-alcoholic drink, to just not participate. And yeah, I was just saying from personal experience, like even with my confidence, it can feel really weird sometimes to be like, no, I'm not playing
And
your
I,
stage. Like,
I think it's really helpful that you shared that because you're clearly a confident person. You have a podcast about dating, like you're out there, you're having the talks. And so it's like if even someone like you can feel peel pressure,
yeah,
the pressure to peel.
yeah. Peel a label. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. If even you can feel peer pressure, then it's like I think that helps destigmatize it as well. Like and I would even encourage you to like let those people know like look, I don't appreciate when you pressure me to drink. It
Well,
makes me
now they
feel
know. Like that was
uncomfortable.
like one of
Okay,
the
good.
first. That was like I'm reflecting on one of the like a year ago when I first met them with this like big. It was like a big party weekend at their college, so it was like also that vibe, right? It's like you're going back to school. You're like where you graduated,
Yeah.
and it's like that. And they really, I was like, guys, I'm not doing this. And now they don't bother me, But I really had to kind of be like, I don't do this. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
that I don't want to. It's just I don't do this. Like I don't play drinking games. I
Good for
don't.
you. And
Yeah.
how did they what did they say in response?
At first, it's
Like
just they were like, "What?" And they just
yeah.
they kept being like, "Come on, come on, come on! You don't have to drink, just play." And I'm like, "I just don't want to be part of this. I don't. It's not fun. I'll be over here dancing in the corner by myself, like
Yeah.
and moving to the music. I'll find another project at that particular party. Like there was someone was making a cake, so I took over that project. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
just did something else, And it's like,
Good for
yeah.
you.
So now they don't bother me, and now also they all know that I like to end things by like 10 p.m. So they don't get offended
Same.
if I leave. I was like, I'm moving home. Good night.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. So will your fiance stay? Like you're cool with him staying out? You're like,
Oh
okay, I'm going
yeah,
home.
he with his really short alcohol, he definitely enjoys it, but like it's not an issue at all. And I've definitely dated people where it is an issue, and I can't like that was really rough for me. So no, he'll leave with me too, though. I actually think that as we get older, it's like kind of nice. Like we don't have to do this to our bodies.
Yes.
Like we're already waking up with aches. You
I
know?
know. And I think that's so beautiful that like that you and your fiance can you have boundaries, you
Yeah.
know, and you communicate with each other. And I think that's really important because you're like, I love you. I'm tired. I'm going to go home. I'll see you in the morning. You know, like
Yeah.
you're cool with him staying out. And I think that
I
that is great.
Yeah, no, I definitely but like I said, I have been with there was one experience I had with a guy I dated for 2 months, and he told me on the 3rd date that he's working on his relationship with alcohol, and I did not know what that meant until we went to a party, and I kind of asked him before the party, I was like, "So, are you gonna drink tonight?" Like, and he clammed up. He just completely froze up, and he was basically sneaking alcohol the entire
Oh,
evening, and I had
yeah.
to take him home early, and it was and then we broke up the next day. I was like, "I like, that's
This is
unacceptable." Yeah.
this is what I'm talking about. Like early sobriety is really tough. It's really tough. And even if you're not fully sober, if you're just reevaluating your relationship with alcohol, it can be really difficult to date because of what you just said. Like he didn't know how to answer that question, you know, and it's like and that was a
Yeah.
valid question.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, I guess
tough.
I asked it out of just, like, genuine support because he had
Yeah.
said he was working on his relationship with alcohol, and I wasn't like I mean, throughout the night, it did dawn on me to, like, watch him more closely. I'm like, "You're acting so
Mm.
weird. You only had, like, half a glass of wine. What's going on? Oh, you've been sneaking alcohol, like, in the bathroom. Got it." Like,
Ah.
yeah. So, yeah, it was one of those situations, and then but at this point, like, we stayed in touch, and he is sober now, so
Oh, good. Well, and you know, you asked how to support, how to like be an ally, and I would say, you know, the most important thing is to ask anyone like how can I support you?
yeah.
What can I do that would show that I love you and appreciate you? You know, like
Yeah.
especially a friend, a family member, how can I show up for you when you're going through this? Because there's, you know, being inclusive, asking people to like, let's go to the movies, let's go to a restaurant that doesn't have alcohol even on the menu. You know, stuff like that can be so, so helpful.
Oh, yeah. I recently went last weekend, I went to an alcohol-free baby shower, and it was
Oh,
awesome.
cool.
It was the tea was very strong, though. I was so caffeinated. I was like, "Oh god." Well, this has been an amazing conversation. This is so enlightening. So you're so positive. Like, it just I love the energy you have about this topic, and you're clearly so passionate about it, and I hope that this reaches so many people. I'd love to ask you, what do you wanna like, aside from the obvious, what do you wanna see more of in dating?
What I want to see more of in dating. Can I say something sexual?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I would love for more men to be open to exploring their anal pleasure. I
Yes.
think or even I think everyone could benefit from that, but I think the fact that so many men don't feel comfortable, don't allow themselves to go there, and it is you're missing an erogenous zone. You're literally you're opting out of pleasure, you know? So I would just encourage more people to look into fun anal play, especially men.
I love this advice so much and fully agree. Yes. You like
It's
it's just like what's so bad at just trying it?
just
Just
try.
exploring, curiosity. It's not like yeah. It doesn't have to be your whole
Just try it,
personality.
you know,
Just
maybe it does not have to be your personality, no, but like maybe read about it, what maybe watch porn that, you know, just see if it is even interesting to you. And if you're even the tiniest bit interested, talk about it with your partner or someone that you trust, masturbating as well. And I think that's another thing, all genders, especially women, please masturbate more. Get to know your body more because there's this, like we talked about, faking orgasms. I faked because I didn't know what I actually wanted. I didn't know how to actually please myself. So if you can know what you're bringing to the bedroom, you're going to have way better sex.
yes. I love this advice. Thank you so much. On that note, where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? How can we get more Tawny?
I love that. You can get more Tawny. My book's available, you know, wherever you buy your books. There's an audio book if you want me to read the book to you, that's an option. Um, My new drink just came out. It's called Parentheses. It's a vinegar-based botanical beverage that my husband and I just launched in December that we're really excited about. I have a weekly podcast called Recovery Rocks, where we talk about recovery and rock and roll. And I write a newsletter called Beyond Liquid Courage, where there's just life without alcohol. You know, I talk about there was a dating column there for a little bit that but now it's my newsletter is mostly about, you know, the non-alcoholic drink space, publishing, journalism, just life, you know, like, because there's also this part of me that's like, I don't want to only talk about sobriety. I'm so many other things, you know, so that's why it's
As
called
a creator,
Beyond Liquid
I totally
Courage.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you get sick of talking about dating, you know, it's like I have other interests.
Only talk about this. I talk about other things, just other places.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, all of that is I'm all over the internet.
Yes. All right. Well, I'll link a bunch of those things in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you and learn more for you. So thank you so much for all your wisdom and your time. This has been great. So what did you think of this episode? You can comment below on YouTube or Spotify if you're listening there. Once again, you can check out Tawny's book, podcast, and her non-alcoholic beverage in the show notes. I want to thank you for listening. Thanks for trusting me. I hope we opened your mind to a whole different side of dating without alcohol involved. As always, you are doing great. I'd love it if you share this episode with someone who is navigating dating and might need a little confidence boost or some tough love. If any of these episodes have helped you, you can help me by leaving a stunning review on Apple or giving Dating Intentionally 5 stars on Spotify. I really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia. This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll catch you next time.